All right, welcome to DrillDown Dialogues. I'm Stephen Nance, CPA Vice President of DrillDown Solution, and I'm joined today by Dr. Jared Franson. Jared, how are you?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's good to have you. We were just chatting a little bit about what you do, and I'm just really excited about our conversation and the value that you provide to dentists who are ready to buy their first practice and maybe beyond that. So tell me first about just a little bit about your professional background.
My professional background is I went to dental school, so I'm a retired dentist. I practiced dentistry for about 12 years out in Southwest Washington. I actually owned four dental offices at the time. I started one of them from scratch, and that's one of the reasons why I ended up buying four is because the first one was going just not fast enough, so I ended up having to buy more offices just to keep going. But I ended up with four. So I mean, I've ran a big office and um, see all the headaches associated with that. And then after 12 years, I had some medical issues and had to retire. And then I switched over to the broker side. I worked for a large company and learned how to do valuations and how to appraise dental practices and saw that in all the 7 years of doing brokering that there was nobody that was ever helping the buyers. I was doing it. It was probably eating up probably 70% of my time was me just educating the buyers about what should be done.
And
And
you were representing the seller.
yeah, so
Yeah.
like people were like, well, what's an LOI? And so they didn't know. So I
Yeah.
had to walk them through that process. And then I like, you have to go find an accountant and an attorney to help represent you because that's what it all was, right? It's like, 'cause I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney. I can't give legal advice or financial advice, but I can send you to those guys that can, especially when I'm representing the seller, right? Um, so about a year and a half ago, I decided that that was enough of that, and I saw that these buyers all needed help. So I flipped sides basically. I'm now over on the buyer side. I still occasionally do sell a practice. I mean, I'm not going to say no if somebody wants me to sell their practice, but I'm very clear about boundaries with that and try to make sure that there's no conflict of interest. But I don't represent the buyers. As on the for a practice that I represent, I still send them to an accountant and they need to have their own independent valuations done. And what happens is those buyers they're educated, right? And so they become easy buyers. They're already went through it and been ready. So it's great to have that network of those guys that I've been talking to for a while. So I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling. Do you have any other specific questions?
No, well, so you hinted on the problem where buyers of dental practices and we're talking private buyers, right?
Yep.
Not DSOs, but private independent buyers typically don't have a lot of representation. They don't have a lot of education on what they should really be looking for in the financials or what these things are, letter of intent, and things like that. And they may not have connections to a good attorney or accountant or other third parties that they need to buy a practice. So when when a doctor goes into that situation unprepared like that, through no fault of their own, what's the impact of buying a practice without having that clear support and education and connections and all of that?
Well, I'm the major impact is it's like you're in Vegas and you're playing the craps table. Like, what are you really buying from somebody? You don't if you're not diving into what's going on in the practice, it's like, how do you know the value that you're paying is correct?
Mhm.
I just recently went through this with one of my clients, and the it was a smaller office. They were asking 475, and we sold it we ended up buying it for 350. So, saved them $125,000 off the price. And it's not always price too. I mean, I've had guys that they've paid the asking price that the seller was doing. But ultimately, what we do is we go through with the buyer and we say, okay, what are you comfortable with? And what is your valuation of this? We don't depend on the seller broker just saying this is what the price is and paying that. We're doing deep dives into these practices and really figuring out, is this a value that you can pay, or do you want to make a lower offer? But these guys jumping in without it, they can get stuck in a practice that's just not kicking off enough cash flow. And then they end up having to work part-time other places. When it just turns into a nightmare for them that they're struggling. Or
Yeah.
they get stuck in a startup. I did a startup, and had somebody got me, I wouldn't have done a startup.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it ended up being fine in the end, but for the first 2 years, I mean, I had to work somewhere else 3 days a week and in my office 4 days a week. I actually had a clinic that was open on Sundays. So I would go like 20 days at a time before I had a day off, just because I'm trying
Gosh.
to get stuff going. And then you get
Yeah.
one day off, and then it's another 20 days. Like, I did that for
Oh
like
my
2 years,
gosh.
getting my practice going. And so it's
How
like,
long did you say?
for like probably a year and a half, I did that.
Yeah. Wow.
And they knew I was starting my own practice, so they knew I was in a hard position, and so they were
Yeah.
totally underpaying me, but nobody else would hire me because they didn't want competition, right?
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So I can't imagine, being in that stressful situation where you're trying to make ends meet. You're realizing, what you bought is not this cash cow that you were expecting when you went into ownership of a practice. You're having to work other places to make ends meet. Um,
Yep.
and I'm sure that's a real situation for many doctors out there today.
Well, and I feel like it's something we don't talk about in dentistry, because it's like you're trying to preserve your reputation.
Mhm.
And so, being on the broker side, I can't tell you the number of times guys would say, "Oh, I'm doing fine, I'm doing great," and they were like, "Well, I'm done. I want to sell." Like, they're in their early 50s and they're just burnt out. And so I get the reports, and they're making like 125 a year as an owner. It's like, well, how are you surviving? It's because they don't have the massive debt that the students have now, so they're okay.
Yeah.
But they're stressed, and they want to get out of dentistry because they don't see the benefit of it. And so I just don't want one of these young guys to come in and buy a practice like that and end up having to work multiple places and doing that. It causes all kinds of stress on you and your family. It's just not fun. They already have enough issues coming out of school with five or $600,000 in debt. Like, there's just nobody out there doing this. It's because everybody out there is just trying to get money from them. I mean, obviously we charge a fee, but I feel like it's very nominal. But every practice I've ever worked on, by the time they bought a practice, they've more than saved the amount of what our fee is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's in excess of $100,000. Like, it's just kind of ridiculous. I mean, I feel like I should just charge a percentage of what I save, and I'd make more money.
Sure.
Um, but we just charge a flat fee, for what we do. We have different levels of service that we can do for them, and our main priority is to make sure that these guys get the education to buy a practice properly, so they don't get stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to the debt,
Yeah.
five or 600,000, is that about average for dental school graduates now?
Yeah, I graduated in 2003, and I had just over 200,000, and I paid out of state tuition at Oregon, OHSU in Oregon. Um, and now I pretty regularly, not everybody discloses what their debt is to me.
Sure.
But the time that I mean, I'm surprised if I see it, it's under 400.
Yeah.
I've seen it over 600 several times, and most common, so somewhere between 4 to 600.
Yeah.
I don't have like some study or something saying what it is, but that's what I see. The guys that are in good situations are the guys coming out of the military, right? But they gave up
Mm,
4 years of their life to go get that done.
right.
Um, so, I mean, to me, that's the way to do it now. I mean, that's the only way to do it without being in debt $500,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what were the in-state tuition people paying when you went to dental school? Or
Oh,
how much debt
yeah.
were they accumulating?
So when I graduated, I think they were somewhere between. 50 to $70,000 a year for tuition. I mean, literally tuition was still like $5,000 a semester. Like it was insane.
Just an
Um,
absolute steal.
yeah, it was. But I mean, that was 20, it was 1999 when I started. And
Okay.
even with my dental school, we started in 1999. That's what it was. Like my sophomore year, the tuition went up like 110% in one year. And so it doubled to 10,000, for the
Yeah.
in-state guys. For the out-of-state guys, I was paying $50,000 a semester to go to dental school.
Yeah.
Or a year, excuse me. Is that
Mhm.
right? Yeah, times four. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was ridiculous then, and it's even worse now.
that's insane how fast those tuition rates went up, and that's probably a whole different discussion.
Yep.
But I mean, if you think about the impact of someone who went to dental school in the 90s and is selling their practice now, they're ready to retire. I mean, they've been debt free most of their career.
Yep.
And someone coming out of school with 600,000 in debt, I mean, that's a totally different financial burden that they carry. And so you talk about the impact of not knowing the value of what you're buying and what the repercussions of that could be if you're already in debt that much. I mean, that just could make for an absolute disaster if you don't have the right representation.
It can, and the unfortunate thing is like if you end up in a really bad situation, those loans are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. Like you're
Hmm.
stuck paying them, right?
Oh man.
They're federal student loans. You can't get out from underneath of them. And so a lot of people don't understand that. I mean, so these guys coming out when they're learning to practice, they can't buy a practice so kicking up like only producing five or $600,000 a year. There's just not enough cash there to even pay their obligations. And unfortunately, what happens is these guys have to go and they have to buy a practice that's doing $1.2 million, and kicking off three, four, $500,000 a year in profit. Um, you know, those are what they have to find. But what happens is the guys in the 90s, they're not running practice. Like the guys that are retiring, they're running practices that are doing five, six, 700,000.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, they
because
didn't have the
they don't
need
have
to
the debt.
drive their collections up like a new dentist does now.
Yeah, so there's not this supply of offices for all these guys. So like I'm in Boise and the competition here in Boise is insane. Like I've had guys that have waited for 2 or 3 years trying to buy a practice and they can't
Mhm.
ever buy a practice and they end up starting one from scratch. Which just makes my hair cringe because I went through that. And I mean, it's just, I mean, I don't understand how doing one from scratch is better than buying one that's at least kicking off 100,000 a year in profit. Like that's much better. You still have to grow it. I mean, the values from you as a provider and a clinician. But guys do it. I mean,
Yeah.
within my house, I mean, within a 5 mile radius of my house, I think there's probably 7 or 8 brand new startups in the last two
Oh
or three
wow.
years.
Oh wow.
And a bunch of them are Heartland Dental or a
Oh.
large DSO that shall remain nameless. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And a de novo practice can, I mean, you have less startup cost potentially, but you have no.
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I've seen it work well, but I would say that's the exception.
Yep.
Most
Well,
of the
and
time.
you really need to like, I mean, there are places you can do startups and be
Yeah,
fine.
right.
But that's, part of what I walk through them with them too is like, okay, where are you doing a startup and why? Like, why are you doing a startup here in Boise when there's 5 other doctors within 5 miles of you that are doing the same
Right,
thing?
right.
But Boise needs more dentists. So you have to, in a community like this, you have to have more dentists. So you're kind of stuck doing that startup. But
Yeah,
it literally takes 3 to 5 years to really get it going.
yeah,
Um, so you're sacrificing your income for especially the first year. You're basically working for free,
yeah.
or very minimal. But I also know there's a states. I worked with a guy in New Mexico. He did a startup practice in his first year. His practice grossed over $1 million. So it's like if you're in the right place, go for it. Because then you can have all your nice equipment and all your stuff. But and what it's amazing to me too that banks lend that, right? They lend for the startup, but they don't want to lend for the practice that's doing 500.
Yeah. Um, I know there are some student loan forgiveness programs for federal student loans, but I've known very few dentists who are able to take advantage of those programs.
Yeah,
Um,
the main one I've ever heard of is like after you've worked for 20 years, then your loans are gone. But that's 20 years,
yeah.
right? One of my clients was in debt like over 600, and his financial advisor actually told him that he needed to just save about $1,000 a month and make minimum payments on his student loans so that when they're forgiven in 20 years, he could have money to pay the tax bill.
Mm,
So, I mean, how awful is that, right? You're like working your whole life just to
yeah.
hopefully that will still be there in 20 years. Can you imagine? I mean, our
Yeah.
government changes stuff all the time. Can you
Right.
imagine being 18 years into that and then they say, "Oh, never mind, this is no
Never mind.
longer valid."
Yeah, I know. And
Like,
that could definitely happen. I mean, not to get too into politics, but we live in a very polarized in political environment. And with any discussion on student loan relief politically, the doctors and dentists are usually not the top of the list that
no,
politicians are trying to help. Uh,
no, they're the ones that they're trying to get more money from, right?
yeah,
Yeah, they're not passing financial things that benefit dentists and doctors very often. I mean, a lot of those programs cap out even. So, like, if you make over, like, you can't even deduct the interest off your account if you make like 200.
yeah,
It's
right.
you're paying all your interest. So there's like, and the other thing now is like when I graduated, my interest rate was just insanely low. I think I reconsolidated my loans. I think and then you make the first 48 payments. I actually had my student loans, a bulk of them at 0.75%, not even
Holy
1%.
cow. Wow.
So it's like, I mean, it was like 2%. And then you set it up on like auto pay and and then you make your payments on time. They gave you another, 3/4 point interest deduction.
Oh
So
my
after
gosh.
4 years,
Wow.
so when I'd make a payment, it was going to my principal.
Yeah.
So it's like I got those taken care of fairly quick because of that. I mean, but if you're paying 7 or 8% like students are now, and you're
Yeah.
600,000 in debt, it's like a
Yeah.
$4 or $5,000 a month payment sometimes.
Yeah. That's huge. So, Jared, what's compared to other buyer representers,
Yeah.
if there are any, or however many there might be, what might be different about your approach?
I try to look at it from a holistic point of view. I try to look at it not just from the valuation and the number side. I also look at it like, is this going to be good for you and your family? Like I've had guys try to buy offices that were like an hour away from their office, or excuse me, an hour away from their home.
From their
And
home? Yeah.
so every day it's a 2 hour commute.
Yeah.
It's like, like I get it, but that's, 8 hours a week. And then it's 10 hours a week if you decide to work five.
Yeah.
It's like you can't add a day there because then you all of a sudden it just eats into your whole day.
Yeah.
And I know dentistry is stressful. And I like when I had my practices, they were about half an hour away from each other. And I spent a lot of time in the car, even at 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
Um, so I try to look at it from a more well-rounded position. I kind of like to think of like I'm a coach of a football team, like I'm coaching you, like,
Okay.
and the dentist is the quarterback, and you have to work together to make it work. You have to assemble a good team. You have to have CPAs like yourself that know what's going on. And I have other guys that hire CPAs, and the CPAs like, I just look at the numbers and like just pay your taxes. Like that's
Mm,
all they do. There's like zero tax
right.
planning. So it's
Right.
like, you have to have people in your corner that are looking out for the benefit of your practice. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
Like it's when you're getting ready to buy. I mean, yeah, you have an attorney. He's only looking at, preventing you from getting in trouble, right?
Right.
A broker that's selling you, he just wants you to buy it. Just the minute that's signed and he gets a paycheck, he's gone. If you do a startup, your equipment guy at Henry Schein or Burkhardt or Patterson or Benco, they're gone once
Yeah.
they get their loan for equipment. Like you're there by yourself. If and so you have to have somebody there to help guide you through it. People get into these practices, and we part of what I do too is I kind of walk them through that first 6 months of ownership too. If they want it, like that's kind of what I do is try to get them to the transition, and then I let them decide, like, hey, do you want help for the next 6 months, right? And so my goal is not to be a consultant. I have an end in sight for my clients. I know in the dental industry, a lot of buyer side representatives like myself are accountants, and so they end up trying to get your business from the accounting side, which
Mhm.
is fine. But like I don't have like I want to work with you as for maybe a year, right? I want to 6 months before you buy a practice. Let's talk about what's going on, go through that process, and then help you get stuff set up once you're in the practice. But I don't have a long term. I
Yeah.
don't want you to stay for 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
Whereas if a coaching or a consultant, they're charging $70,000 a year sometimes. Like
Mm.
it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been very great information and a good discussion. So, Jared, if someone wants to get in touch with you and inquire about your services, or if they have other questions, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Probably just my cell phone. It's 208-949-0868. That's probably the quickest way to get a hold of me. Texting, I text all the time. Or you can even go to my website, which is owner2dentist.com. And it's with the number two in there. So owner number two. Um, so it's owner2dentist.com, and you can fill out a form there on our website and we can connect. Honestly, I feel like this is just the tip of the iceberg with that's what's there's just so much that goes into buying a practice. And
Sure.
these guys just like, if you've never done it, like, why do you come, like, you spend 600 grand on your school and then you come out and no, I'm just going to do this on my own. Like it's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
Um, because especially now when the margins are so slim, right? With the numbers are really mounting up, and anything we can
Yeah.
do to fight against that is great.
Well, thank you very much
Yep.
for your time today and this discussion. You have a good rest of your day, a good weekend.
All right.
Thanks again.